This week, what approach should Canada take with the Trump administration? Also, does the Conservative Party of Canada need a rebrand? I'm Glenn McGuinness, and this is Outburst.
In my opinion, I think they've gone too far right.
I don't think so. I think Stephen Harper is the best Prime Minister we ever had.
I call it a right-wing party. Stephen Harper was right. It's just too far to the right for me. We need somebody in the middle.
Andrew Scheer as leader missed a lot of opportunities.
I think they need to modernize.
As Conservatives gear up to pick a new leader after the sudden resignation of Andrew Scheer, whoever emerges as winner could be overseeing a reboot of the party. A recent survey by Abacus Data says that those who were polled used words and phrases like old and out of touch to describe the party. Some also said they would consider voting for the party in the future, but wouldn't vote for the party now. So, what do you think? Our question: does the Conservative Party of Canada need a rebrand?
Definitely. They need to get someone charismatic to be in charge, and maybe they'll get somewhere. There's a lot of great people in that party, but they need a good leadership.
I'm not sure what they need, but they need somebody with leadership qualities that can have a vision for the future, and not just be there for their own interest. I don't see that in politics.
I don't think so. I think Stephen Harper is the best Prime Minister we ever had, because he made use of our resources and he helped grow the economy and stuff. I don't think Canada really needs to do so much of being too modern or anything. I think there's more practical ways we could use what we have. So
I think they need a new leader, and I think that the party's got to go back to its core values and start talking about what they can do for the country and not what everybody else is not doing for the country.
Well, in light of what happened to Andrew Scheer, he kind of dropped the ball, and I don't think they were on the pulse.
I think they learned a lot of lessons by the Liberals remaining in power. And so I think the sort of sheer approach to social conservatism has been reduced in favour. But of course there are always people who are more obsessed with ideology than with getting elected. So I think there's still plenty of those in the Conservative Party.
It's too far to the right for me. For me, anyway. Well, I call it a right-wing party. Stephen Harper was right. It's just too far to the right for me. We need somebody in the middle.
I think right now, with what we've seen certainly under Andrew Scheer and certainly under even other people coming forward, that in actual fact it hasn't taken climate change seriously. It hasn't taken other issues seriously in terms of what need to be addressed. And I was really concerned that in actual fact possibly some candidates or some people, their approach to how they want to gain votes is a kind of a divide and conquer approach. So I think it really needs a positive leader who actually will do good things for Canadians. I think it's possible, but right now I haven't seen that in terms of what I've seen come forward.
They are now the party of the elderly, kind of like Buick is the car of the elderly. Buick did a rebrand and all their cars look good. Same thing with the Conservative Party of Canada. They're out of touch with the millennials and even the common people.
In my opinion, I think they've gone too far right on the conservative issues, and that's what kind of held them back to only Alberta and Saskatchewan. Yeah. So yeah, they need to change their views, their policy on some basic issues, in order to try and get people's confidence and vote again.
I think it does. I feel like Andrew Scheer as leader missed a lot of opportunities, and I feel like part of that was catering to the wing of the party that has socially conservative values. So I feel like a new leader will bring new life, and I do feel like the Conservative Party spent too much time fighting over issues which weren't necessarily on the forefront of Canadians' minds in the last election.
Do you think they went too far left in the last election?
No, I think they went too far right. I think if they'd pivoted a bit more towards the center, they would have peeled off more moderate voters who were certainly displeased with Justin Trudeau, but were concerned about some of the social conservative issues that the United Conservatives were pushing forward.
But I think people were tired of their ways, and I think they need to change. I think they need to modernize.
Absolutely. They're too old. They need to be more socially acceptable and focus more on the economy and development of job opportunities, and skip all the rhetoric on social issues. It's more important that we get Canada to work, and so that should be their focus. And like I say, I believe that fundamentally most Conservatives are socially acceptable on a lot of fronts, and so that needs to be the message that's conveyed. And I don't think we got that from the previous Conservative run under Andrew Scheer, and hopefully when they pick a new leader, they'll find somebody that's a little more dynamic and forceful and wants to get Canada back to work.
I consider myself a Liberal Conservative. I have some Liberal beliefs and I also have some Conservative beliefs. The Conservative Party needs a strong leader that can not only connect to the Conservative members of our country, but also the NDP and Liberal individuals and citizens of our country. They need a strong leader, a leader that not only one person can connect with, but an entire nation.
The Conference Board of Canada predicts the Canadian economy will see both highlights and lowlights in the near future. Canada's trade sector will be challenged by a weak global economy, but the economy will be supported by a strong labor market and a modest growth in consumer spending. It's also predicted there will be no changes to interest rates in 2020. So, how do you see things unfolding? Our question. How confident are you about the Canadian economy?
I think it's been better. It's been better. It could do better. There's potential. We have resources, for sure. So.
Talking about the oil?
Yeah, definitely. I'm talking, especially coming from Alberta in the last year and a half. A lot of businesses going out of business. A lot of people struggling. I know guys selling their equipment to make payments and stuff. So the hurt is definitely there. People are hurting from it.
I don't dwell on it a great deal in terms of how well it's doing, how bad it's doing. The biggest concern I have, relative overall, is who's actually benefiting from the economy we have right now. And we have the greatest ever economic inequality in our country and globally. And I just read a stat recently where they said that the vast amount of additional money or earnings last year or the year before in our economy went to the very top 1%. So the question is, I want a fair economy, and I want one that serves the interests of most Canadians. And whether the economy is turned to be doing well or not doing well, I want to look at it in those terms.
I am fairly confident in the Canadian economy. The biggest worry I have right now is, to some extent, Brexit, but to a larger extent, what's happening in the States. I think they might directly impact us significantly in the near future.
I'm moderately confident. I think there's a good... there's a lot of immigration coming, and you know, more so, I guess, in different parts of the country. Like in the Maritimes, there seems to be more of an economic boom than, say, the Midwest. In our jurisdiction, I believe that we're pretty comfortable. We have a construction outlook that's 5 years now. Our biggest problem is getting skilled labor.
Well, I was in the restaurant business here for 35 years, and there were only a handful of us. And now I see all these people who are in the industry, and we have a thriving industry here. And, I think it's great. gives us all kinds of different foods to eat, and it's great for the economy.
I am an optimistic person, confident in it. I'm not. I'd be in the middle of the survey because I don't have confidence that all the economic decisions that are being made are good ones. On the other hand, I still think Canada has a lot of really good things going for it and a good workforce, and we're not spending money on excessive conflict.
I worry every day. It's where I find a job, and in a few months here I'm moving back to BC because there's no jobs here. I know a lot of my friends and family here have issues with jobs and everything, but there's ups and downs every couple of years, right? If you look past 8 years, there's been up and downs in the economy every 8 years or something along those lines.
Myself, I'm on a very low income. Like they're letting businesses up the prices on everything where it's out of hand. I can't afford it anymore. Why is that allowed? If there was some kind of a system in place where it's controlled, where to make businesses and corporations realize and recognize, hey, keep it at a standard level so that it's affordable for everybody, not just people that have more money than the other people do.
Very confident. Our economy is still largely petroleum-based. It will continue to be that way for decades. We need to get our act together to make the country more prosperous with Canadian oil. We shouldn't refer to it as Alberta oil. People in other parts of the country, I don't know that they want to acknowledge that they benefit from it, and it's very short-sighted to try to restrict, things like pipelines. We're still going to need oil infrastructure for decades to come. We just can't halt, development of these things.
Fairly confident. I think Trudeau is doing all he can for the country itself, and his cabinet, his party, and with our opposition, they're kind of keeping the Trudeau government in line. So it's good in the sense that he has a minority government, because in a minority government, the House has more say. Representative, they have to do a vote on any bill. They can't just pass it on their own benefit. It has to go to the House and has to be voted. So that's a positive thing about having a minority government.
Right now, not very. I used to be an oil field heavy equipment operator. I used to make close to $9,000 a month working seismic. And life was good then. The economy was great then because people like me, young men would make bad choices with money and it helped the economy.
I think it's probably a booming economy in places like Toronto and Ottawa, and that's as far as the government's going to look. And when it comes to other parts of the country, then obviously there are issues. I don't believe StatCan reports correctly when they talk about jobless numbers, because people who come off the EI rolls because it simply ran out aren't counted anymore. So consequently, I suspect it's a lot worse than it probably is being reported.
It's a difficult question because as an Albertan, I draw some distinction between the Alberta economy and the Canadian economy. The Canadian economy, I generally have some confidence that it's doing well, but the energy sector, which is one of the main drivers of the Canadian economy, certainly is still in very difficult times. So I have a moderate level of confidence in the Canadian economy. I don't have much confidence in the Alberta economy right now, unfortunately.
We're strong. We're lucky. We're Canada. We have more resources than anybody in the world. So, you know what? There is no reason for Canada to be this poor. There's no bloody reason at all.
How many points does the Maple Leaf have on our flag? 5, 11, or 15?
11.
Maybe 11?
15.
11. Probably go with 11.
How many points? 15.
11.
It's 11.
Yeah! I did it!
The Maple Leaf on the national flag of Canada has 11 points in total. The maple leaf was chosen because of its ongoing use as a symbol for the country for over 300 years. Red and white became the country's official colors in 1921 because of their use in the Canadian coat of arms. The use of these two colors to represent England and France dates back to the Crusades of the 11th century. The flag was approved by Parliament in 1964 and became the official flag of the country on February 15, 1965.
A good portion of your hard-earned money, of course, goes to taxes. But where and how the government spends that money is something many Canadians take a great interest in. Whether it be in healthcare, education, infrastructure, you name it. Where do you feel it should go? We sent this question to Canadians.
Where would you like to see your tax dollars invested?
That's an interesting question. I'd like to see my tax dollars invested where there's the most value for it. So I don't necessarily know what the answer to that is off the cuff. I feel like economic diversity, technology, education are a few things that come to mind. But I want effectiveness for my dollar more than anything else.
Out of government. I would prefer our tax dollars be left in the hands of the taxpayers. So we have way too much government in this country. So I'd like to see it invested more in developing economies and not job creation programs, but promoting industry so that private sector can grow the job market and not rely on government at job creation. Government as job creators generally turns out to be a real bad thing. They don't spend money wisely. So
where would I like to see my tax dollars invested? Funny as it seems, I'm not a NDP kind of guy, but I think I'd like to see my tax dollars invested in renewable energy, solar panels, and that's really not my deal. As an oil field heavy equipment operator, that would put me out of work, but I'd be just as fine working on solar panels as I would be up north in the Yukon on heavy equipment.
I'd like to see it invested in lower income people and in the Medicare system. And somebody had suggested there a while ago about a pharmacare national. I think that would be great. And then, of course, for pensioners.
I'd like to see my tax dollars invested in areas of, instead of contributing to people struggling with addictions, for an example, I'd rather see those dollars invested in some kind of a solution where instead of helping them stay where they're at, getting them out of it, like finding a place where they can be comfortable, people that can work with them, and help come through with solutions to help get these people off the streets.
Business development. I think it's very short-sighted to create government jobs. It's just a drain. I mean, the Alberta NDP did that, and it was disastrous. And it's being done at the federal level right now. The government, the Trudeau government will, claim increases in job numbers, but it's not sustainable. What we need is a more systematic program of business investment. We have to attract international funds to build our projects and to run our businesses, and government should facilitate that with things like training program, making it cheaper for business in order to hire skilled people. Because if they have to bear the brunt of the cost of that, that's going to restrict business operations.
I think more on climate change, and for me, I think housing is a big thing on PEI, because an average person can't pay $1,700 for 1 month's rent. That's someone's salary. So it's just getting to the point where does it stop and where does it end, right?
Because I'm aging, I'd like to see it, healthcare and more social programming. Than I know infrastructure's huge, but more so in social and health.
More like not only mental health services, but mental health, just more resources, I think, put to that. It's one thing, to talk about it more, but to actually have those resources in place, especially now, it seems like it's a bit on the decline, unfortunately, but hopefully that can get figured out, and hopefully, they'll kind of reevaluate where their, kind of priorities lie.
I think we need to create a guaranteed income for all Canadians, and that's what I would like to see. A lot of people say, oh, well, they couldn't handle the money, or how can we pay for that? You know, without EI and without social services, I think it would be a very easy thing to do. And that'll put more money into the economy, because the people that get the money, give them a weekly check. If they get the money, they're going to spend it, and that's all. It's all going to, what goes around comes around.
We have crisis in the healthcare system. There's not enough doctors, and I see it that way. There's every time you go to the coffee shop, there's somebody talking they can't see a family doctor. Waits are very long.
I mean, listen, life is a balancing act, and I mean, healthcare needs attention. The poor, the homeless, they need attention. Somebody's got to balance our priorities, and I mean, I think really that's the only answer. You can't. I don't know how you. I don't know how you deal with the people that are unfortunate enough to be homeless and living on the streets. I don't know enough about how you help them, but I do think that in Canada that we are a wealthy society, and I think a country is judged by how it looks after the people that are less fortunate.
The relationship between Canada and the U.S. in recent years has seen a shift. Nations who negotiate with the Trump administration on sensitive issues, particularly trade, will have their work cut out for them. The recent NAFTA negotiations was proof of that. It has been said the U.S. president can be very unpredictable, and being the next-door neighbor, our relationship to our southern friends could have a profound effect on us all. So we took this question to you.
What approach should Canada take with the Trump administration?
That's kind of difficult to answer. Trump is hard to predict sometimes, and I think what Trudeau is doing right now with kind of keeping him at arm's length is a smart move, and I believe just waiting and hopefully he does not be elected again. I know from listening to past news conferences and his Twitter feed, he's an incredibly hard man to speak to and try to trade with.
You got to stand beside your neighbor, no matter what, unfortunately.
I think we should embrace Trump. Trump has shown that he's a leader when the chips are on the ground. Dealing with Iran, he was stately. I mean, a friend of mine who's an insider told me that the evening of the big crisis, they took his phone away from him. Probably a good idea. I'm not saying you should support Trump, but we should look at the Republicans and embrace them. Their Israeli peace plan is incredible. If you've read anything about it, Arab countries are coming online with it.
Trump is not shy about giving his opinion, is he? So why should Trudeau be shy about returning it?
A very cautious approach. The Trump administration in many ways is very predictable, but by its unpredictability, that's one of the files that I think has been more difficult for our current federal government to manage, and I think they've done a fairly good job in terms of not biting on things they shouldn't bite of, but still trying to protect Canadian interests.
Well, given that President Trump has managed to turn the American economy into a thriving entity, I think we should be maybe working more with him as opposed to putting up roadblocks to him and that. So I'm not a big Trump supporter for his out-of-control tweets and other rants, but fundamentally he's got America back to work, whereas we seem to be stagnating. So should we be working with them? Absolutely. They're the biggest economy in the world, next to perhaps China, but fundamentally they are our trading partners. They're our allies on many issues. And all we seem to have been doing lately is pissing them off. So that doesn't make a lot of sense. So anyway, I'd rather work with the guy than try and fight him, because we'll lose every time. We're just not economically big enough.
I'm hoping that this may be the last year of the Trump administration, but I think we're trying to deal with certainly an administration that doesn't care about the population as a whole or about the interests of the planet as a whole. I do think that we have a very strong bilateral arrangement that we should try to do our best in terms of having a positive relationship, but it's really hard to do so when you have such an administration that cares so little about people or the economy or even rule of law or even human rights. So I think we need to hoe a fine line, but I think it's important to know that if we have principles, we should stick by our principles.
I like Trump. I think he's cool. He's doing things that a lot of politicians aren't doing.
I think we're dealing well with it, just to pretty much ignore it and let it play itself out and don't get involved.
It's all happening over there, so I don't know. It's hard to say what we can do from Canada. I mean, again, it's something that I try to keep up with, but I don't stay on top of it because it's like it's too much for me. It is important, but again, I don't know what we can do from here. Like, it's kind of up to the American citizens to figure out what they want. So it is nerve-wracking, but you know.
Yeah, yeah. It is hard to like look at it in a, I guess, diplomatic way with the whole. It's just the whole circus going on. I don't know. It's almost more of like a TV show than a real when you try to keep up with it. So I don't know. I think the best we can do as Canadians is just like try to look past all that and just kind of see what's really going on. And I don't know. I guess just try not to feed into the maybe more negative aspects of that word. Yeah.
I guess we have to put up with them until he's gone. Which is what I think they've been doing. You know. And I think a lot of countries have been doing.
Oh, I think we should shamelessly curry favour with them and be good neighbours and, you know, not trash their democracy. But, you know, I mean, Trump is a loose cannon with regressive policies. So, you know, we certainly shouldn't mimic them. But I don't think there's anything to be gained by, you know, starting a peeing contest with them. Thanks for watching this episode of Outburst on the Cable Public Affairs channel. I'm Glenn McGuinness. If you have any comments or questions about this show or any other show, you can find us on social media. You can also find us on our website at www.cpac.ca. It's your turn to speak up, and we're listening.